Hi folks, you're with Tacitus today, your pushback channel. I'd like to talk about the increasing price of commodities. Now, when I say commodities, I'm talking about the international pricing for things like wheat or corn or grains generally, oil, gas, and so on. Now, most of these are traded on the stock market in what's called futures contracts. Effectively, they're contracts. I'm simplifying this a bit, but effectively they're contracts that say what the price of a ton of wheat will be 3 months from now, 6 months from now, and so on. Now, this is very much controlled by the big Wall Street players that can stack the deck heavily in their favour. But when you go to buy wheat or sell it or whatever, then this becomes effectively the guiding price for the sale of the wheat and the purchase and the sale of the wheat or the oil or the gas or the whatever. So futures contracts, copper, it could be futures contracts are pretty fundamental to the functioning of the system. Now, the way the futures contracts are meant to work is to accurately send the market price, the market price of the value of wheat, or the presumed value of wheat, assuming the future, of course, and that price will be, and if you like, the true, the real, the intrinsic price, with some speculation baked in because it's future, of course, but that'll be the price. So it's meant to be raw market signals of supply and demand are being projected, and this is determining the price of all these different commodities. Now, the world has just had a bumper harvest, for example, a bumper harvest of wheat. So there's wheat everywhere you look. Canada, Australia, US, and so on. Big wheat harvests. So now Russia is a reasonably, or Russia and Ukraine, particularly Ukraine, is quite a major supplier of wheat, but mostly to the really poor countries, ones like Pakistan, Bangladesh, and Indonesia, and so on. And a lot of that wheat or the grains also go into, say, feeding cattle, for example. But nonetheless, they're supplying these very poor countries that can't afford to pay top dollar for top quality wheat. As in the better quality wheat for things like bread and cereal and making pasta, things like that. So they've got the lower quality wheat there, and that's sold to these poor countries, I say, such as Pakistan, Bangladesh, Indonesia, and the like. So the population they're supplying to, which, by the way, their main staple these places is rice. It's not bread. So there's about 1.4, give or take, 1.4 billion people that are buying wheat from Ukraine and Russia. So let's suppose that all that crop is lost and it can't be supplied. There's more than enough, as I understand it, to make up for that from, again, places like Canada, Australia, and so on. But it's a higher quality, more expensive wheat to be. But it could, in theory, be done, that supply. And then they've got the latitude to increase rice consumption in these places, which is the staple anyway, to make up for any difference or any shortfalls. So really, there's enough supply out there, as I understand it. There's enough supply out there of wheat. Now, if that's the case, why is the price going up so much when there's a supply? Similarly with oil. Now, I appreciate it. The US isn't going to buy Russian oil or something like that, but Russia is a major supplier of oils. But not all oils are the same. Some oils are only suited for making, petroleum, gasoline. Other oils are more suited for making for heavier applications such as engine oil or grease and so on. So there are, and not some have got high octane, low octane. Some need a lot of additives and processing. Some not so much, or different forms of processing. So I don't think all the oils are exactly the same. They're not. But the other producers of oil, such as in the Middle East and around Mexico and in South America and so on, the oil production there in terms of barrels of output could be easily increased and could easily make up the shortfall that the Western world is experiencing. Now, it may take a few weeks to ramp it up or something. I'm saying it's push of a button. But we're seeing huge prices, well over $150 a barrel on the world futures contract prices for oil. Now, that's quite artificial, in my opinion. It's quite artificial. I think it's being deliberately pumped and manipulated by the big banks, who are also very much front and centre in the globalist project. So I think it's part of that globalist project. And when we look at sort of Russia, they were deliberately antagonising, NATO and the US and so on, deliberately, and using Ukraine to do it, deliberately antagonising Putin. And they had intelligence that when he got annoyed to a certain point, he'd probably invade, if anything, just to try and sort out that eastern Ukraine thing, and to prevent the Ukraine from the flirtation with NATO and that sort of thing, to have a government there that was less controlled by the US. And the government must be controlled by the US, given all the money they funnel into the pockets of the Biden family, for goodness sakes. There can't be any doubt as to where their allegiances are. So I think the pricing and the size has been if you like, a script that's been pre-written months, if not years ago. Well, we'll do this if it does that. We'll do so and so, and then that adds into the big globalist project and the Great Reset and so on. So I think the whole thing's been scripted and choreographed. I don't think the prices of the futures represent the reality of market supply around the world or the ability to change it. I think that's all being manipulated, artificially push up prices and create a form of fake inflation, which can then be used to justify various other emergency powers and arbitrary powers by Western governments, who are of course all globalist controlled anyway. So have a think about that. There was a time when market forces meant something. The globalists control all of it now. And if there is any market forces, they step in to counter that and make sure that the market signals don't function. For example, if there's supply of labour and that sort of thing, let's simply import more people. So when it comes to their cost inputs, they don't want market forces to work. If market forces are driving up prices, then they're happy with that. If market forces are driving down prices or preventing their profits, then they'll step in again to intervene. So we don't live in a market economy anymore. The scraps on the ground can be, the rats and the mice can compete for that, but everything else is being divvied up, like victors in the spoils after some great invasion. I think that's how it is now in the West. So you've been with Tacitus today, your Pushback channel, and thank you for listening.